Thank you. Welcome to Lancaster on the Move. Today I have the privilege to be with Professor Paul Reville. Professor Paul Reville is the Francis Keppel Professor of Practice of Education Policy and Administration at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. Furthermore, he is the founding director of the Ed Redesign Lab, and he's a former Secretary of Education for the state of Massachusetts. Very accomplished. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor Paul Reville.
Bryant, good to be with you. Thank you for inviting me. I look forward to our conversation.
Yes, thank you. Could you tell a bit more about the Ed Redesign Lab?
Well, the purpose of the Ed Redesign Lab is to achieve a very bold and aspirational mission of creating the opportunity for all children to experience well-being and economic and social mobility in our society. We're about not only improving the quality of education, but improving the quality of children's lives when they're not in school. Children are in school 20% of their waking hours, out of school 80% of their waking hours, plus all the time wherever they sleep. And so the conditions and circumstances of children's lives have a profound effect on whether they get to school in the first place and whether they can concentrate and focus and learn at high levels. And so our premise is that education reform dedicated an enormous amount of financial and people resources to improving schooling. And we've made some progress in improving schooling in places like Pennsylvania, but nowhere near enough. And so we come to the conclusion that schools alone are not enough to create a fair society in our country, to create equal opportunity to move forward, and to, importantly, in our cities, to create prosperity for young people. If young people do well, a city will thrive, because a city needs talent. A city needs people who are economically viable and can buy homes and pay taxes and be active citizens. And so to the degree that we have an education system and a quality of life that allows young people to flourish, we will have healthy communities. And so the focus of our work is to build cradle-to-career pipelines. In other words, quality preschool, K-12, and post-secondary, but just as importantly, systems of support. And by that, I mean everything from medical care, that is healthcare, optical, dental, hearing, things of that nature, to the circumstances of life: clean air, clean water, stable housing, adequate nutrition, and things of that nature, and opportunity, in that 80% of their lives that they spend outside of school. What kinds of learning opportunities, summer camp, tutoring, things that affluent people provide to their children automatically and easily, are not easy to provide if you don't have the resources, contacts, and time to do that. And so how do we build those kinds of learning opportunities? Kids learn every bit as much outside of school as in school. We just measure it in school and we hold the schools accountable. But really, a fairer way to do it is to build an environment that allows kids to flourish and be healthy. Just as those of us who have privilege do for our own children, we ought to be doing that for all children. And so we're dedicated to a variety of different interventions, ranging from children's cabinets to success planning for young people. Every child has a plan and a navigator guiding them through the various systems that affect their well-being. And we work with cities and organizations all across the country to do this.
Yeah, and one thing we're facing as well is, like, in terms of school transportation and childcare transportation, specifically for working families and single parents, we see some barriers assessing the right services, and so that needs to be addressed in our community. Can you speak a bit more about the importance of continuous learning and from a child development perspective?
Well, there's no question that continuous learning is absolutely essential to children's healthy development, to their thriving, and ultimately to our being able to prepare them to be good citizens and to be able to support themselves in this economy. So that is really important. No period of life is more important, the research will show, not just education research, but neurological research, that the greatest period of brain development in human development is in the earliest years. So what we do in that 0 to 3 or pre-zero, really, pre-birth through age 5 are the critical years of brain development. So it's essential for children not only to have stimulation and educational opportunities during that time, and naturally to have the transportation to get there. Transportation is a means to the end. You can have a first-class education system, but if you don't have a transportation system to get people there, it doesn't really matter. So when we cost out what it's going to cost a family or what it's going to cost a community to provide these services, we have to take transportation into account. But the other point that I wanted to add, in addition to the kind of stimulation that education represents, we have to prevent young people from experiencing toxic stress, from experience those adverse childhood experiences that get in the way of healthy brain development, that flood our systems with cortisol, that interferes with healthy brain development and functioning. And this means those adverse experiences are everything from violence in the community to disruption in housing, to noise, to interrupted nutrition or inadequate nutrition, to lack of health care, to lack of dental care, all kinds of factors that get in the way that create toxic stress in children's lives that prevent them from learning, even if you can transport them to and give them access to a high quality early childhood system. So the transportation problems are, they're vital to prosperity in communities generally. They're important for getting our young people to school and getting our adults to work. And so as we think about education, we've got to think about those associated transportation costs and do it efficiently and effectively and without polluting the environment or jamming our roads with traffic as best we can. But it's got to be there.
Yeah, thank you so much. And also in Lancaster, there's a lot of good energy, a lot of stakeholders that want to do something about it, from the chamber, from the workforce development board, from community partners, and here at City Hall as well, city leadership, wanting to do more for working families to ensure all residents and children have an equal chance for developing. And one concept you also advocate for is this collaborative action, and specifically place-based collaborative action. What are some of recommendations you could give us here in Lancaster?
Well, first, let me define place-based collaborative action is what is necessary to build the cradle-to-career pipeline that I spoke about earlier. In other words, you look at that kind of ideal pipeline that you'd like to construct, and as a community, you make decisions about where are the gaps. You do a gap analysis. So we don't have enough after school. We don't have enough summer learning. We don't have adequate dental care, let's say. We don't have adequate preschool. And then as a community, we come to work on these issues. We don't overload the school system and say to the education system, which was really designed for academic purposes, we don't say to them, you've got to solve all these problems outside of school in addition to getting our children to world-class standards in school. No, we call the rest of the community to the table, create a children's cabinet, create the kind of collaborative action where everybody comes to the table saying, what is the contribution that we can make to children's health and well-being in this community? And how can we work together to adopt the policies and attract the resources necessary to be able to provide services and supports that we aren't already providing. And our experience in a lot of communities around the country is when they do this kind of enhanced communication and collaboration that you get in children's cabinets, they find ways and means of getting access to additional resources or ways of solving problems that have been persistent over time, but they've never come together as a community to think about the particular assets and affordances that each of these organizations and individuals who care about children can contribute to solving a persistent problem like a transportation problem. So it's that convening that's crucial. And our belief is that mayors can play a critical role in this. And we've gone to communities all around the country where you have mayors who say, I may or may not be responsible for the education system. Often the education system is governed separately. But I know that the education and well-being of children is absolutely essential to my community thriving in the future. Therefore, I'm going to ask all the departments of city government, my health department, my parks and recreation, my criminal justice, everybody get around the table and say, what are we doing to contribute to children's well-being? We're going to invite to that table grass tops and grassroots organizations in the community that care about young people, parents organizations, unions if they're involved in it, the private sector, the chambers of commerce, who have a financial stake in the future of the community. Get everybody around that table and various sub-tables that you design to solve certain of these problems. And let's have people put their heads together. We find that in this sort of divided political world that we see on the national stage, it's often in local communities like Lancaster, where people know one another, they've been together for long periods of time, they can come to a common table and solve persistent problems if they just have the focus and the challenge from civic leaders to do so.
Thank you. That's a wonderful insight. That's really a lot of inspiration. I think we welcome you to come visit Lancaster. Again, in the spirit of being welcome, we welcome you one day to visit Professor Reville. And I want to thank you for your comments and also your contributions to the series Lancaster on the Move. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Bryant, and I'm thrilled that the community of Lancaster is interested in this kind of work and embracing this kind of work. It's good for children, it's good for families, it's good ultimately for the community. So best of luck in your work, and let us know how we can help.
Thank you very much, Professor.